Welcome back to Book Dive, where we distill those big old books into something you can actually digest on your morning commute.
That's right, because who actually has time for a whole book these days?
We're cracking open a classic today, folks. One that's sold, get this, over 10 million copies. The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck.
A classic for a reason.
Now, this book, it's not like your average self-help fluff piece.
Well, not at all.
Peck gets real, digs into love, discipline, spirituality, all the good stuff. Expert speaker, you ready to get a little philosophical with us?
Always up for a good existential exploration. Let's dive in.
Let's do it. And for our book divers listening along, want to grab a copy of the book? We've got you. Check out the affiliate link in the show notes, all right? This one, trust me, it's one you're going to want to hold on to.
Absolutely.
So Peck, he kind of kicks things off with a bit of a, maybe not a motivational poster kind of statement. Life is difficult.
Right.
Not exactly what you want to hear with your morning coffee, right?
It's not the most uplifting quote, I'll give you that.
So why start with such a downer expert speaker?
Because he's laying the groundwork. See, Peck's not trying to, bring anyone down. What he's saying is that accepting how tough life can be is actually the first step to really overcoming those obstacles.
Wow.
It's like, instead of wishing it were different, you're saying, all right, this is what I've got, let's work with it.
I like that. It's like when you finally admit, okay, I am not a morning person.
Yeah.
And you stop trying to fight it, and suddenly mornings become, if not enjoyable, at least manageable.
Exactly.
You find your groove, right?
You got it.
And Peck, man, he's just so good at taking these kind of big, complex ideas and making them stick. Like his whole cake analogy.
A classic.
I got to admit, expert speaker, I'm a sucker for frosting, so break this one down for me and our viewers, all right?
So, Peck, he asks you to imagine you've got this piece of cake.
Right.
And he asks, do you go straight for the frosting or do you savor it for last?
Frosting first, 100%, no question.
Right. Instant gratification, right. But here's where Peck flicks the script. He says this whole, I want it now thing, it often spills over into how we approach our work, our tasks. We go for the fun stuff, the easy wins first.
Avoiding that big pile of to-dos.
Exactly. Leaving all the hard, maybe even boring stuff for later. So he's kind of challenging us to, to face the cake, the less glamorous stuff, before we reward ourselves with the frosting.
Interesting. So it's not just about resisting that extra donut. It's about recognizing this pattern, everywhere. At work, in our relationships, even in how we grow as people. Are we always taking the easy way out?
Exactly. It's about being more mindful, more aware of the choices that we're making, and honestly, where we might be choosing that quick hit of pleasure over, real lasting fulfillment.
That's a reality check right there.
It is.
And, Peck, he doesn't shy away from those tough conversations, does he? Especially when he gets into discipline.
Right, and he's not just talking about disciplining other people, but ourselves too.
Oh, that's always harder, isn't it?
It is. For Peck, it all boils down to focused time and attention, not just to ourselves, but to, the people around us. He uses the example of really listening to a child, which sounds simple enough on the surface, right? But think about it. In our world, we're constantly bombarded with stuff, with distractions.
All the time. Truly
Truly being present in that moment, putting aside your own mental to-do list, that's hard. It's a skill.
Oh, tell me about it. It's so easy to get stuck in your own head, right? You're half listening to someone, but you're also planning dinner and mentally checking your inbox.
Yeah.
But that deep, real listening, that's where the magic happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Real connection, understanding. It's like you're tuning out all the noise and just tuning into that person right in front of you.
Yeah, it's exactly.
And that leads to another big one, love. Peck, he doesn't sugarcoat it. He's basically saying real love takes work. Real conscious effort. It's not a feeling that just washes over you.
It's so much more than that.
It's a choice, day after day.
Yeah.
And speaking of love, Peck, he really kind of throws a curveball when it comes to how we usually think about love. Expert speaker, this was huge for me. Where do we even start with this?
Well, he throws out this this radical idea. He says dependency, needing someone else to feel complete, that's not love. Not to him.
Interesting.
He says it's clinging to that initial spark, those butterflies, that intense romance. But clinging to that, he says, can actually prevent us from building something real, something that lasts.
So it's about moving past the honeymoon phase into something, deeper, more intentional.
Exactly. It's think about the difference between a fling and a real committed relationship.
Big difference.
Right. Real love, the kind Peck's talking about, requires two whole people, two individuals choosing to be together, not two halves desperately trying to become whole.
Okay.
It's recognizing that, you know what, we're each responsible for our own happiness. And that love, it actually grows stronger when both people are free to be themselves.
Yeah, it's about choosing to love someone for who they are right now, flaws and all, not for who we want them to become. And that's a completely different way of looking at love than, all those fairy tales were raised on.
It really is. And that leads us to, I think, another one of Peck's ideas that can be tough to swallow at first, this whole giving up thing.
Right, giving up doesn't exactly sound like a recipe for success, does it?
Not exactly, no.
Yeah.
But before anyone thinks we're saying to just give up on your dreams or whatever, let's dig into what Peck actually means here.
Please unpack this one for us.
Okay, so Peck, he uses this personal story to kind of get his point across. He talks about how he's always been like a competitive guy, especially when it comes to games, playing games. And he hated losing, even to his own daughter during their chess matches.
Yeah, he talks about how his need to win, it actually ended up with his daughter, in tears, right? It's pretty intense.
Yeah, and it's this really honest look at how even the things we think are good, like being driven, wanting to succeed, it can actually backfire if we're not careful. He realized that by needing to win so badly, he was creating this distance between himself and his daughter.
Wow.
So he had to make a choice. Hold on to his ego or let go and actually really connect with his daughter.
And that's the real lesson, isn't it? Choosing connection, even if it means, quote unquote, losing the game.
Exactly. Giving up. The way Peck uses it, it's not about just admitting defeat. It's about realizing when our old ways of thinking, our old habits, they just don't serve us anymore.
It's being brave enough to surrender to something bigger.
You're right.
Bigger than our need to be right or in control or whatever.
You got it. It's like choosing to learn a new dance, right? Even if it means tripping over your feet at first. Because you know it's going to lead to something more beautiful, more, expressive in the end.
Love that. And, this whole idea of being willing to let go, to surrender control, it ties into another one of Peck's more interesting ideas, that even depression can be a part of growth.
Right. That's a big one.
Because on the surface, it doesn't really track, does it?
Yeah.
How can something that feels so heavy, so negative, actually be a positive thing?
Think about it like this. Sometimes we really do need to grieve the old self, let go of those patterns and beliefs that aren't working for us anymore to make room for something new. And depression, sometimes it's like shedding old skin. It's uncomfortable, messy, but it's got to happen for growth to occur.
So instead of just thinking, what's wrong with me, when we're feeling down, maybe we can also ask, what if this is part of a bigger change, something good trying to happen?
Exactly. Now, I'm not saying we should romanticize depression. It can be incredibly painful. But it's important to remember that sometimes growth, it means moving through those dark, difficult places to get to the other side.
To the light at the end of the tunnel. It's about trusting the process, even when it's tough.
100%. And speaking of trusting the process, Peck's thoughts on grace and spirituality, they had a whole other dimension to this whole conversation about growth and change. I mean, here's this guy, a psychiatrist, a man of science, yet he was so open to the mystery of it all.
It's interesting, way. So what's the deal with grace, according to Peck?
Well, he talked about these totally unexplainable moments we all experience, synchronicities, those meant-to-be encounters, events that just defy logic and make you think, what was that?
Like when you think about an old friend and then, boom, you bump into them at the grocery store that afternoon. Or you have a dream that feels strangely real.
Yes, those moments. Peck believed these weren't just random coincidences, but these glimpses of something more, a deeper order. He even uses the term miracle when he talks about grace, like when someone survives against all odds or experiences a seemingly impossible healing.
It's like the universe, or some higher power, is sending us little signals, little winks, nudging us in the right direction, even when we're totally clueless.
Exactly. And that's where Peck's idea of a loving God comes into play. He suggests this force, this grace, it's driven by something bigger than us that wants us to grow, to evolve. It's not just luck, it's like we're being guided toward a purpose.
Okay, so it's not just about working hard and making good choices, but also about being open to these little nudges, these opportunities that just seem to pop up.
Right, but here's the catch. Peck says that more often than not, we actually resist this grace.
Really? Why would we resist something that's supposed to be good for us?
Because often accepting help, embracing change. It means changing our ways, letting go of habits that are comfortable but maybe not serving us. And that's where laziness, or maybe more like a resistance to putting in the effort, comes in.
Laziness, the ultimate frenemy, right? We were talking about it earlier with discipline, but it sounds like it plays an even bigger role when it comes to, resisting this idea of grace.
Absolutely. Peck describes it as this force of entropy, like this natural pull towards disorder, towards taking the easiest route, even when it's not the best one for us.
So we end up taking the scenic route when what we really need is the express lane to growth.
It's like, imagine you're standing at the edge of a diving board and you're hesitant to jump, even though you know the water is going to be amazing. We let our fear, our laziness, keep us from really experiencing life fully.
So how do we overcome that?
Yeah.
How do we work with that resistance?
That's where conscious effort comes in. Peck was all about choosing to show up, to engage with challenges, and to really actively seek growth and understanding. He said that even though this force of grace might be guiding us, we still have to make the choice to take the leap.
So it's a two-way street. Grace is there, but we have to meet it halfway. We have to be willing to do the work.
That's a great way to put it. It's a dance. It's this collaboration between this, maybe unseen force and our own willingness to actually get on the dance floor and move.
And, all this talk about effort and growth makes me think about another big theme in The Road Less Traveled, this idea of power.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one for Peck.
Because we usually think of power as this, kind of aggressive thing, being in control, maybe even dominating others. But Peck, he has a totally different take, doesn't he?
He does. He talks about two different kinds of power, political power and spiritual power.
Okay, so less about ruling with an iron fist and more about, inner strength.
Exactly. Political power is all about outward control, positions of authority, that kind of thing. But spiritual power, that's about looking inward. It's about self-awareness.
Makes sense.
It's about being conscious of your choices, acting with intention. It's about aligning your actions with your values, even when it's tough.
So it's not about how many people you can order around, but how well you can master yourself, your own thoughts and actions and habits, all that.
Yeah.
Which actually kind of circles back to what we were talking about earlier with dependency not being love. Why was that distinction so important for Peck, especially when it comes to relationships?
Because for Peck, needing someone else to feel whole, to feel okay, that's a form of weakness. It's clinging to someone out of that neediness instead of from a place of genuine love and respect. He says, real healthy love, it needs two whole people, two individuals, each one capable of standing on their own, coming together because they want to, not because they need to.
Choosing each other.
Choosing to grow together, to support each other's journeys, but not depending on each other for their very survival.
It's about taking responsibility for your own happiness, right?
100%. We can't expect someone else to fill those empty spaces inside us. We got to do that work ourselves.
Yeah.
And that leads to, I think, one of the most challenging but also the most hopeful messages in the whole book. That we're all here for a reason, that each one of us has a purpose, a calling to contribute to something larger than ourselves.
Yeah, that's a big one. It can feel overwhelming, right? Whoa, what's my big purpose? How do we even begin to wrap our heads around that without getting totally freaked out?
Right, and Peck gets that. He knows it's a lot to take in, this idea that we're not just here to, pay bills and watch Netflix. But he also reminds us that it's not about, having to go out and achieve something huge, be some kind of superhero.
So it's not about having to, quit your job and start a nonprofit tomorrow.
No. It's about bringing that awareness, that intention to even the smallest moments of our everyday lives. How we interact with the barista making our coffee, how we show up at work, how we treat that annoying neighbor.
The little things.
The little things, exactly. Because even those tiny acts of kindness, of choosing love over fear, of choosing connection, of choosing growth, they all add up.
Like that whole ripple effect thing, right?
Yeah. Exactly. We're not just these separate beings floating around. We're all connected. And what we do, how we choose to be, it matters.
It makes a difference.
It does. Peck reminds us that we're not powerless. We're active participants in this giant unfolding story. And it's a story we get to write together with awareness, with love, with that deep knowing that we are all connected.
Wow, that's a powerful message to end on. And book divers, I got to say, if you're feeling the weight of those big questions like, what's it all about? What am I supposed to be doing with my life? The Road Less Traveled. It's not always an easy read, but it's worth it.
It really is. It's a book you can come back to again and again, and each time you might pick up on something new.
Absolutely. And that's what we're all about here at Book Dive. We're all about taking those deep dives into these powerful ideas, these amazing books, so that you can walk away with, something real, something you can actually use to navigate this crazy thing called life.
To live a more fulfilling life, for sure.
So until next time, book divers, keep those pages turning and those minds expanding. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.